Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It is July the 25th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and this was a really interesting day. It started out real slow. It looked like we were just going to be kind of mired in ranges here, although they are stepping up. But suddenly we broke out, and we had a little rally here, and you can see there's a clear two-tiered channel working up that we originally shot right on through late. Well, this was well after 2, so I didn't mark anything up here, but this would have been one trade that you might consider at 2 o'clock because it does bounce right off that trend line, and that trend line's been working well. And if you draw your little uh, trend off this, you do get a close and a new low, and that's a nice bar. So you might, if you were still trading and hadn't, slow as it's been really as the day went on, that's a nice move. So that's just something to think about. I didn't mark it because I never mark anything after 2, and I usually don't watch it after 2. Usually if I'm here at the office and I'm not tied up with something else, even if I'm not trading, I'm watching them chart. I've got this going and I'm watching it, while I do something else or whatever. So I'm generally watching the chart at least till 2 o'clock. Um, I may have it open and I just glance at it every once in a while. I may not be watching it bar by bar, but I'm just kind of keeping up with what's going on. It looked like this was going to be a typical day until this, and boy, this just really took off here. So it was interesting. But anyway, let's talk about what is here. And there's not a lot of trades here today, so it won't take too long. But first trade I saw, 7 o'clock, we were just kind of going sideways here. But there is a reversal right here, right off the, this was a nice reversal. I was a little concerned because it's right into this upper trend line, but I probably got that a little tighter than it really is. Um, and we did bounce right off the EMA. The reason I still like this one is because this is support and this is resistance. This is an obvious channel. We've been going back and forth. So you got to figure this is where we're headed. So for that reason, I like that one. Turned out to be a pretty good trade. It went right where we thought it would go, and then it went a little further actually. There's another little double test here of this level. Notice it came back and tested. Let me make this just a tad bigger. That may be hard for most of you to see. There's a test here and a test there, and there's a little drop below those matching lows across there. So that's that little drop. It is right into these highs, and that's, you got to be concerned about that. But this is right off the EMA. It's that double test. It looks like this is actually dropping down here. I think it's a little risky. I marked it because if it does push through here, it could take off. But I just thought it was a little risky. So of course we keep moving, working up, and notice how far we've been away from the EMA. Notice how far that is away from the EMA. I went back and forth about whether or not this one should be green or red. It's probably right there, borderline. But you got a double top. Notice that double top right there. I don't have a line across there, but even a basic trader can see that. And you broke higher and failed and turned down. That closed on its very low, and you're so far away from the EMA. Generally, you want to wait on a lower high, but a lot of times you don't get a lower high. This is one of those times you don't get a lower high until way down here, and you don't want to be going short down here. So, and a lot of times these catch major highs, and down here it catches a major low. This was before 7 o'clock, or I might have put a, you know, at least a green one there. But those are, again, I'd rather wait on that lower high, but you just, you never know if you're going to get one. And generally, if this hadn't just pushed off and hadn't had that one tick higher, I'd probably say you got to wait. But I like this trade because there hadn't been much happening, and you definitely don't know you're not going to go much higher up here, even if you do push up higher. And the odds are you're probably going back because we haven't tested this breakout yet. Well, we tested it here, but it'll just about always come back and test that again. And when we came back, it just went right through it, so it didn't hold. But that would have been the trade of the day right there. This wouldn't have been a bad one, but this one's a little riskier. This one's than this one is. And of course, we get the close outside and the new low. And again, you might have even considered that one. I didn't mark it because it's a first entry. It's just one leg down. Everything's below the EMA. This looks really bearish. There's a good chance you might get another leg. We do end up with basically two legs, but they don't look like you would expect them to look. Measure it like that. Then you move this one over here, and there's your second leg down. It's a perfect to the tick measured move. And so you still got it, but we rallied a little bit before you got your second leg. And so it just, this one was not easy to see. You would think that when it rallied back this far, that we probably weren't getting the second leg down, but we still get it. And of course, again, we're back up here at the highs. I don't see any setup there that's worth taking. Here's your lower high right here, and it's a second entry short. And look at that low, first entry, second entry. That's a nice second entry short, and it looks like it's going to fail. It ticks higher and turns back down. And if you weren't already in, I would definitely get in there, and I wouldn't have a problem adding on there because we're probably headed back down to here, and that's exactly where we go to. And then we just get kind of stuck in this. We're going sideways, and we have that, suddenly we drop, have that little failed break lower. And there is a little trend line here. There's a close outside, move to a new low, and then there's a second little attempt. And those are the ones I like to catch because if you're right, this is what you get. I mean, you could have caught this one trade and sat in this all the way up through the end of the day. And I mean, that is a huge move from the lows where you would have gotten in is around, let's just call it 28.22. And if you just rode it to the, and this line here is just a measured move from these channels. This is a midline on these two, but in the end, there's a bigger pattern, and that looks like the midline. So that's just a measured move right there. And if you just rode it to right there, 22 to maybe 46, 47, that's a nice move off of one runner. I mean, one runner, that's a lot of scalps. People ask me that a lot of times, how do you make it, if you're losing, well, let me reword it. If you're, the math doesn't look real good if you're using an 8-point stop every time and you're only making 4 ticks every time. But you don't always have to use 8 ticks. Probably wouldn't have even used 8 ticks on this, but people forget about the runners. And these are the kind of places you always want to hold a runner on these breakouts and these major highs or lows or whatever. And if you catch this one runner and you make 22 points, well, that's like 22 winning scalps off one, and that's just if you got one contract. So that really changes your math. So I thought I'd throw that out there since we have, since you could look at what one runner could possibly do for you. And you may not ever make 22 points on a runner. I've rarely ever made that kind of money on a runner because I always exit. I always like to take, when it starts backing up and selling off real strong here. I may not have on this one because there's still the trend line possibly in play. But once there looks like there's any chance, like right here, we're going into 2 o'clock and this big sell off, we're still inside this trend line, but I might have sold there, and I might have even sold off here, but I would have looked for another entry. But I'm pretty good at picking the entries where some people aren't as good and they're better at holding on to runners. I just have a hard time. That's my nemesis, so to speak, is that I can't stand to see my prices profit trading up here to 28.30, and then a few minutes later I'm down here to 26 or 28.26. I can't hardly stand to watch 4 points evaporate off a nice move. So I usually will exit, and then I'll look for another entry. But I'm better at finding the entries. That's where I'm better at. So it may be working just the opposite for you. You may not be as good at finding the entries, but you don't have any problem watching prices back up and take off and back up and take off. And if you can do that, that's the way go with what works best for you. That's the reason I don't talk a lot about exits and targets and things like that, because it all is personality driven, and what works for you and your personality may be different than mine. But anyway, back to the chart lesson. You got that failed break lower right there, and that runs up, and we actually pushed through where the last highs were and back up, and we bounce, and it's right off that same trend line, and then all of a sudden we back up, and notice how it gaps over that trend line. It tells you it's probably in the right place, and it bounces right off that support resistance line and takes off. That's a failed second entry short. There's a little room there. We're at least going to probably make a new high here, and we may be going higher. And so I like that trade. Once it started doing this, I really didn't think it was going higher. I figured we'd probably push up a little bit like this, and then maybe we would correct, or we might make a measured move, which, you always want to look for that. So you would measure this one and look for a measured move up to there. So we may go up to there, and that's what I was shooting at there. But you've also got that first leg right there, and you put another leg, and it's a little bit higher. And so that gives you a lot more confidence on that one being right at the key entry point, right off the bouncing off the support resistance line, basically off the EMA, um, that kind of thing. So I like going long right there. And again, you wouldn't have caught a runner on this one, depending on how you entered. If you entered with a buy stop, you probably wouldn't have. You would have got stopped out. That shows you how efficient the ES is. It's an interesting market because it it almost always will come back and get the break even because they know weak traders will use break even. They won't give it a lot of extra room. So if you really want to catch more runners, you'll probably give up a little bit more of your profits on scalping. But if you really want to catch more runners, and maybe you only do that on trend days when you got good trends going, you give it a little more room than break even on your runners. So you might use the whole trade as break even, and that way you don't really make any money or lose any money. If you get stopped out, well, you tried to get in and catch a runner, but you couldn't. But if you do catch a runner, like here, or somewhere in here, or here, you might make a lot of money. So just something to think about. I'm still getting off on a tangent here, but I like that one. And then we tried to go lower twice. Look at all that support across there. We tested it. We've got a double test there basically again. Tested it. We came down there, and then we came back and tested it again. We went up and came back and tested it again. So it's not a real clear double test, but it is. That's a fairly bullish bar. It's a little breakout pullback long. I like going long right there. And that was a quick, easy scalp, and then it comes back. This bounces right off the key entry point. It's a very small bar on top of that. That's a 3-tick bar. That is very low risk. The most you can probably lose is 4 or 5 ticks there, depending on how you set it up. And it is off a key entry point. It's not a perfect doji. There's 1 tick in there, and there's 2 ticks on the lower, so it's really more bullish than it is bearish. But it's not a perfect signal bar. But the big thing is there's a nice little trend line working down through there, and there's no. Actually, there is a close outside and a new low all in the same bar. You might say that's good enough since it's off the key entry point, but it's not ideal. It's not perfect. But nothing ever is in trading. So with that being 3 ticks, I mean, I'd say take that, especially off that key entry point, and especially with this overshoot. Now, there's another thing too. This overshoot could mean we're going to reverse, but when it bounces to the tick right there, I think it's worth risking it. Generally, it probably would have traded on through if it was going to push on through an equal distance, or it will come up short an equal distance. And this one, it just goes right to the trend line, and then it breaks higher. So I think that one's worth risking. And if you catch that one, again, you're backing this move all the way up all day. And then, of course, now we're running up this trend line. That's the first break. And we did get a perfect measured move almost. It went a tick or two, but look how it closed inside. And then you get 2 swings back to the EMA, the midline, and you got a fairly bullish bar there. We're probably going to at least go back up and try to make a new high or attempt it. So you might jump in there. That's a hidden second entry. There's actually 2 swings there. You can't see it here, but if you went to a little smaller chart, you'd see the clear 2 legs and a little push higher on one of these swings, and off it goes again. It didn't take off the real big move didn't take off yet, but this is obvious. This is a working 2-tiered channel, and it's getting stronger because now we're kind of hanging around in the upper side. We hung around in the lower side early, and now we're hanging around. So you might risk that one. And then now you've had your close outside this trend line, 2 legs up to a new high. Again, we've turned down there 3 different times, and you got a fairly bearish bar. You may want to try to ride that back. It could just come down and bounce at the midline EMA. So you might try to get a little better entry, and you could have. You could have gotten filled right at the low there, and that would have given you a little more room, enough to get out before it corrected a little bit and then turned back down. So I like that one because there weren't a lot of. We're way overdue for a little bit of a correction here, especially now that you've gotten 3 pushes off that upper trend channel, and now it's pretty obvious this is your channel. And then, of course, like I said, once we took off higher here and got above, I'd get a measured move of this one and move it up. And the market got so strong, we even got an overshoot of that. Notice how it pushed through. It come back and tested. It couldn't hold, and then it comes back and tested. When it came back through here, it came back and tested it from the underside. So I feel pretty confident that's what was going on. This is a 2-tiered channel that once it went higher, it was a bigger 2-tiered channel, and this was just a midline. So most of that's after 2 o'clock, so it doesn't matter, but I thought it was worth talking about because it's kind of unique. We don't see stuff like that often. But not a bad trading day, not a great one. You had to just kind of be patient and kind of wait. And again, I didn't mark that one. You could probably, like I said, you could argue for that to be green. I'm not crazy about it, but you may take it because not only is it, even though you have your break in a new low, at that point, this was still looking like the support resistance, and it's right back into that, although it did push through first and then come down. So it kind of cleared it out a little bit there for it to maybe come back and try this retest, because this never had a retest. We just sold off there. Generally, you would expect it to bounce somewhere around this EMA and then try the retest, but it played around a little bit before it did. And it came back and tried to make another low, which again, we talked about the 2 legs, and there's a 2-legged correction in the middle, 2 legs, but I'd still measure this from up here. But if we kept going a little bit lower, you may move your measurement to here because it's 2 legs. So like I said, interesting day, not a horrible day, but not the best day either. But when you start getting sideways here, you can trade it both ways. And when you get in these channels and trends, and you might have to use your shorter term stuff. It's not always real clear, and this might have been a little more difficult for some people to see. You probably wouldn't have had that much big a problem finding this trend line, especially once it bounced here. But it may not have made much sense what was going on above that. So, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again tomorrow and wrap up our week. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.